Hi everyone. So we've now reached the Easter holiday, so I thought this would be a really good opportunity for me to talk about books that you wouldn't necessarily do for coursework, but you might want to just read for pleasure. Um, so this week I'm going to be talking to you about graphic novels. So graphic novels are sort of like comics, but more like a novel kind of thing. So I didn't really start reading graphic novels until university, where I did a module on graphic novels. Um, and I was like, oh, this is going to be stupid. I'm not going to enjoy this. I won't get it. And I absolutely loved it. And ever since then, I've had a bit of a passion for graphic novels. So, what I'm going to do this week is I'm going to talk to you about 3 graphic novels that I've really, really liked. Okay, so the first one is called Black Hole. It's quite chunky, but actually you'll probably read it in a couple of days. It's like the beauty of graphic novels is that you actually get through them really quickly because there's obviously not that many words per page. So a bit of a warning about Black Hole. Quite sex and drugs heavy, so not for the faint-hearted. So what Black Hole is about, it's about a group of teenagers in Seattle in the 1970s. And quite a lot of them like smoke marijuana and they go to parties quite a lot. And then some of them start contracting this sexually transmitted disease. But this is like not like anything you've seen or heard of before. So what it does is it makes them like physically disfigured in some way, but it affects all of them differently. So they'll either kind of like get these kind of warts on their face, or some of them grow a tail, or some of them grow scales, or like start shedding their skin. One of the characters grows a mouth on his chest, which is really weird, and then the mouth starts talking. It's all very, very weird. So the students that actually contract this STI start to become really isolated from their family and from their friends. So they feel like they can't tell their parents, and then when their friends find out about it or their peers find out about it, they get really ostracized, and it means that they have to like go and live in the woods. And it's really interesting because it's ostracizing them from normal society, but actually it brings those that have it together, which is interesting. I really like this book because stylistically it's really, really cool. So I'll show you some pictures from there. So yeah, super cool. It's really interesting as well because a lot of the characters are quite androgynous. So you will have to like if you do decide to read it, you will have to like keep flicking forwards and backwards to find out which character is which. So it does get a little bit confusing because a lot of the characters are quite androgynous. So there's a female character called Chris who looks like 2 of the male characters. So really, really androgynous, and it's interesting as well that she's got quite an androgynous name. So there's kind of like a lack of identity in this normal society, created by all the characters looking quite similar, being portrayed in quite a samey way. But then when they contract this disease, actually they become much more individual because the disease affects them in totally different ways. Anything else I need to say about Black Hole? No, not really. If you are one of my students and you would like me to bring this in when we are back to college, I am happy to do so if you'd like to borrow it. But yeah, really great graphic novel. Okay, so the next one I want to talk to you about is called Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi. So this is a little bit chunkier, and it will take a little bit longer to read. Really, really interesting book about the Islamic uprising or revolution in Iran. Something that I knew nothing about at all. So I really like this book because it actually taught me something, which was good. So it's a Bildungsroman about a young girl growing up in Iran, and she's from quite a westernized middle class family. So when it's the Islamic uprising, there's like lots of pressures put on young girls. So they're forced to wear headscarves and cover up and be really, really modest in the way that they dress. But because she's from quite this open westernized family, it makes her feel like an outsider. And then what she does is she gets more involved as she grows up. She's like, what's going on? You know, why do we have to cover up? And she sees her mother get shamed in the street for not wearing a headscarf. And it's a really, really confusing time for her when she, you know, sees all this happening. But then as she gets a little bit older, she starts to get more involved in like political demonstrations, and this causes a lot of stress for her family and her parents, because, you know, they worry about her getting into trouble. And the Islamic rulers are really, really fascist. So they won the vote by 99.9% of the vote, which is obviously just not true at all. It's totally like fabricated, and they've kind of gained all this control. So lots of demonstrations start to happen, but then people are kind of beaten up and taken to prison. And her family are really worried that that's going to happen to her. So they send her to Austria to be schooled. So she starts at a boarding school in Austria, and when she's there, even though she's from quite a middle-class westernized family in Iran, when she's living in Austria, she's really shocked at how open the person that she's living with is, like talking about sex, and how open she is with things. So not only is she like feeling like a bit of an outsider in her home country, Iran, but she also feels like an outsider where she's been sent as well. So she lived in Austria for a little while, and then the story follows her moving back into Iran as well, where again she's made to feel like an outsider, and it's like she doesn't really have a home anymore. She doesn't feel like anywhere is home for her. So yeah, really interesting book, and it is autobiographical as well, so it is based on her actual life. So I'll just show you like some of the images and the pictures. This is what it looks like inside. So yeah, it looks quite simplistic and childlike, so it's like quite cartoony, but I think that's really interesting because it's quite actually a grown-up story. You know, it's something that is very, very real, but it's the way that it's presented feels quite childlike. Okay, so the third book I want to talk to you about is V for Vendetta. So this is one that you might have heard of. There is a film version of this as well. So this is by Alan Moore and David Lloyd. And it's probably one of the most famous graphic novels. So I'll just show you inside. So this is about, like, it's like a dystopian and post-apocalyptic version of London, where we've got like very much a ruling class that kind of rule over everything. And it starts on Guy Fawkes night. So it's imagined like Guy Fawkes night 1997, I think. And obviously that is a time that has already passed. But that's when it's set. So it's like 1997, but it's also post-apocalyptic as well. So we've got this young girl called Evie, who is, I think she's 15 or 16, and lots of people are really, really poor at this time. So what she does is she tries to like prostitute herself for money, and she accidentally sexually solicits like someone in the government, and then he like tries to kill her, and it's very, very unpleasant to start with. But then this character called V, who is totally anonymous, he wears a mask the whole time, he saves her, and then she becomes his apprentice. But even though she's his apprentice, he will not reveal his true identity to her, and he won't tell her who she is, even though they're quite close. You know, he still remains totally anonymous to her. So she helps him with the things that he's doing. So he's a total anarchist. So he goes about society causing trouble, trying to kind of overthrow the government. So she becomes his apprentice and helps him do those kinds of things. And it's basically how they get on with doing that. So it's, as I said, it's set in London. It refers to many real places in London, which makes it feel quite real, even though we know it's like dystopian. And it helps us to imagine like this actually happening. And it also refers to lots of like crimes that have already happened. So like corruption in the government, things that actually you think, oh, that could probably happen actually. This is probably the one that like most looks like your traditional comic book as well. So it's interesting to think of maybe the V character as a bit of a superhero kind of figure. So yeah, another one that I really, really enjoyed. And I'm not actually a massive fan of superhero books or stories, but I did really like this. Okay, so that was my take on graphic novels. There are obviously lots of other graphic novels out there. Another one of my favourites is called Maus. I actually don't have it with me. I think I've lent it to someone. But it's spelled Maus, and that's all about the Holocaust. So obviously another really, really dark topic, but one of my favourite graphic novels. Okay, so that's it for me for this week. So this Easter holiday, make sure you do some reading for pleasure, not just for coursework. Actually, all reading should be for pleasure, really. Like, you should always enjoy reading, but maybe just for pleasure this week.